Peter Schiff, CEO, Euro Pacific Capital, joins us live out of Weston, Connecticut. Peter, always good to talk to you. Belated Happy New Year, and good to have you on the show. What do you make of this market right now?
Well, I think what happened this morning is Jim Bullard came out again and threw the market a lifeline. He hinted at maybe a more dovish outlook from the Fed for rate hikes, but rather than acknowledging the weakening U.S. economy, I think Bullard wants to preserve the phony narrative that we have a real recovery. So he really blamed his or couched his dovishness by saying that it was the low oil price that may cause the Fed to rethink its monetary policy and maybe slow down the pace of tightening until the oil market turns around. And I think that's what rallied the market.
Hold on here. You're sounding kind of skeptical. You don't think the Fed should be watching what's going on with oil, the volatility in markets, to do with that, to do with China?
Well, I think the volatility in the markets has been created by the Fed. I mean, so, the Federal Reserve is the reason the market is so high in the first place. They inflated it. I mean, they did it deliberately to engineer a wealth effect. And, it's phony wealth, unfortunately. And when you create phony wealth with a stock market bubble, the result is, substantial malinvestment. You encourage all sorts of uneconomic activity to take place. You get rampant speculation. And, of course, when the artificial high wears off, and that's what's happening now, particularly now that the Fed has raised interest rates and is posturing as if it's going to raise them some more, the air is coming out of this bubble, and that's where the volatility is coming from.
Okay. Let me throw a spanner in the works here. I would say that, since they hit the liftoff button back in December, there's probably been maybe less volatility. If there has been volatility or heightened volatility, it's less because of the Fed and more because of commodities, oil, that whole sort of vicious cycle. But let me ask you this. Is there a case to be made that as much as you believe that a lot of what we're seeing was engineered by central banks themselves, that is there any other recourse? I mean, if they weren't there, things would be worse. One, and are you concerned that maybe not so much the Fed, but everybody else, the ECB, the BOJ, et cetera, they are simply running out of ammo, running out of room to even artificially stimulate things and keep things going when there's so much volatility out there to do with commodities in China?
But again, you have to realize, why are commodities falling in price? It's because of the Fed. It's because the Fed is threatening to raise interest rates. Everybody believes that the Fed is going to be raising interest rates. That is strengthening the dollar, and it's the strength of the dollar that's undermining commodities, because commodities are priced in dollars. And if the dollar goes up, commodities become more expensive for everybody who has to pay in a currency other than the dollar. And so this is the source of all of this instability and volatility. It is the widespread belief that the dollar is going to keep rising. But the reality is the dollar is not going to keep rising because the U.S. economy is either already in a recession or rapidly heading to one. And so the Fed is not going to be able to continue with cheap money. With rate hikes. It's going to have to reverse course. It's going to go back to zero, maybe negative. It's going to launch QE4, and that's going to be a game changer for the currency markets and the commodity markets.
Okay, and also gold, which, you've been a gold bug for a long time, but that's a conversation for another day. Peter, we'll have to leave it there. Good to talk to you. Appreciate the time. Peter Schiff there, Euro Pacific Capital, live out of Weston, Connecticut.